Daily Reading Through the Bible, Week 10, Day 4, Numbers, chapters 19 through 21, Colossians, chapter 4. The scriptures quoted are from the NET Bible, netbible.com, copyright 1996-2019, used with permission from Biblical Studies Press, LLC. All rights reserved. Numbers 19. The Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron. This is the ordinance of the law that the Lord has commanded. Instruct the Israelites to bring you a red heifer without blemish, which has no defect and has never carried a yoke. You must give it to Eleazar the priest, so that he can take it outside the camp, and it must be slaughtered before him. Eleazar the priest is to take some of its blood with his finger, and sprinkle some of the blood 7 times in the direction of the front of the tent of meeting. Then the heifer must be burned in his sight, its skin, its flesh, its blood, and its offal is to be burned. And the priest must take cedar wood, hyssop, and scarlet wool, and throw them into the midst of the fire where the heifer is burning. Then the priest must wash his clothes and bathe himself in water, and afterward he may come into the camp. But the priest will be ceremonially unclean until evening. The one who burns it must wash his clothes in water and bathe himself in water. He will be ceremonially unclean until evening. Then a man who is ceremonially clean must gather up the ashes of the red heifer and put them in a ceremonially clean place outside the camp. They must be kept for the community of the Israelites for use in the water of purification. It is a purification for sin. The one who gathers the ashes of the heifer must wash his clothes and be ceremonially unclean until evening. This will be a permanent ordinance for both the Israelites and the resident foreigner who lives among them. Whoever touches the corpse of any person will be ceremonially unclean 7 days. He must purify himself with water on the 3rd day and on the 7th day, and so will be clean. But if he does not purify himself on the 3rd day and the 7th day, then he will not be clean. Anyone who touches the corpse of any dead person and does not purify himself defiles the tabernacle of the Lord, and that person must be cut off from Israel. Because the water of purification was not sprinkled on him, he will be unclean. His uncleanness remains on him. This is the law. When a man dies in a tent, anyone who comes into the tent and all who are in the tent will be ceremonially unclean 7 days. And every open container that has no covering fastened on it is unclean. And whoever touches the body of someone killed with a sword in the open fields, or the body of someone who died of natural causes, or a human bone, or a grave, will be unclean 7 days. For a ceremonially unclean person, you must take some of the ashes of the heifer burnt for purification from sin, and pour fresh running water over them in a vessel. Then a ceremonially clean person must take hyssop, dip it in the water, and sprinkle it on the tent, on all its furnishings, and on the people who were there, or on the one who touched a bone, or one who was killed, or one who died, or a grave. And the clean person must sprinkle the unclean on the 3rd day and on the 7th day. And on the 7th day he must purify him, and then he must wash his clothes and bathe in water, and he will be clean in the evening. But the man who is unclean and does not purify himself, that person must be cut off from among the community, because he has polluted the sanctuary of the Lord. The water of purification was not sprinkled on him, so he is unclean. So this will be a perpetual ordinance for them. The one who sprinkles the water of purification must wash his clothes, and the one who touches the water of purification will be unclean until evening. And whatever the unclean person touches will be unclean, and the person who touches it will be unclean until evening. Numbers 20. Then the entire community of Israel entered the wilderness of Zin in the 1st month, and the people stayed in Kadesh. Miriam died and was buried there, and there was no water for the community. And so they gathered themselves together against Moses and Aaron. The people contended with Moses, saying, "If only we had died when our brothers died before the Lord. Why have you brought up the Lord's community into the wilderness, so that we and our cattle should die here? Why have you brought us up from Egypt only to bring us to this dreadful place? It is no place for grain or figs or vines or pomegranates, nor is there any water to drink." So Moses and Aaron went from the presence of the assembly to the entrance to the tent of meeting. They then threw themselves down with their faces to the ground, and the glory of the Lord appeared to them. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, "Take the staff and assemble the community, you and Aaron your brother, and then speak to the rock before their eyes. It will pour forth its water, and you will bring water out of the rock for them. And so you will give the community and their beasts water to drink." So Moses took the staff from before the Lord, just as he commanded him. Then Moses and Aaron gathered the community together in front of the rock, and he said to them, "Listen, you rebels, must we bring water out of this rock for you?" Then Moses raised his hand and struck the rock twice with his staff, and water came out abundantly. So the community drank, and their beasts drank too. Then the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, "Because you did not trust me enough to show me as holy before the Israelites, therefore you will not bring this community into the land I have given them. These are the waters of Meribah, because the Israelites contended with the Lord, and his holiness was maintained among them." Moses sent messengers from Kadesh to the king of Edom. "Thus says your brother Israel, you know all the hardships we have experienced, how our ancestors went down into Egypt, and we lived in Egypt a long time, and the Egyptians treated us and our ancestors badly. So when we cried to the Lord, he heard our voice and sent a messenger, and has brought us up out of Egypt. Now we are here in Kadesh, a town on the edge of your country. Please let us pass through your country. We will not pass through the fields or through the vineyards, nor will we drink water from any well. We will go by the king's highway. We will not turn to the right or the left until we have passed through your region." But Edom said to him, "You will not pass through me, or I will come out against you with the sword." Then the Israelites said to him, "We will go along the highway, and if we or our cattle drink any of your water, we will pay for it. We will only pass through on our feet, without doing anything else." But he said, "You may not pass through." Then Edom came out against them with a large and powerful force. So Edom refused to give Israel passage through his border. Therefore Israel turned away from him. So the entire company of Israelites traveled from Kadesh and came to Mount Hor. And the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron at Mount Hor, by the border of the land of Edom. He said, "Aaron will be gathered to his ancestors, for he will not enter the land I have given to the Israelites, because both of you rebelled against my word at the waters of Meribah. Take Aaron and Eleazar his son, and bring them up on Mount Hor. Remove Aaron's priestly garments and put them on Eleazar his son, and Aaron will be gathered to his ancestors and will die there." So Moses did as the Lord commanded, and they went up Mount Hor in the sight of the whole community. And Moses removed Aaron's garments and put them on his son Eleazar. So Aaron died there on top of the mountain, and Moses and Eleazar came down from the mountain. When all the community saw that Aaron was dead, the whole house of Israel mourned for Aaron 30 days. When the Canaanite king of Arad, who lived in the Negev, heard that Israel was approaching along the road to Atharim, he fought against Israel and took some of them prisoner. So Israel made a vow to the Lord and said, "If you will indeed deliver this people into our hand, then we will utterly destroy their cities." The Lord listened to the voice of Israel and delivered up the Canaanites, and they utterly destroyed them and their cities. So the name of the place was called Hormah. Then they traveled from Mount Hor by the road to the Red Sea to go around the land of Edom. But the people became impatient along the way, and the people spoke against God and against Moses. Why have you brought us up from Egypt to die in the wilderness? For there is no bread or water, and we detest this worthless food." So the Lord sent venomous snakes among the people, and they bit the people. Many people of Israel died. Then the people came to Moses and said, "We have sinned, for we have spoken against the Lord and against you. Pray to the Lord that he would take away the snakes from us." So Moses prayed for the people. The Lord said to Moses, "Make a poisonous snake and set it on a pole. When anyone who is bitten looks at it, he will live." So Moses made a bronze snake and put it on a pole, so that if a snake had bitten someone, when he looked at the bronze snake, he lived. The Israelites traveled on and camped in Oboth. Then they traveled on from Oboth and camped at Abarim, in the wilderness that is before Moab on the eastern side. From there they moved on and camped in the valley of Zered. From there they moved on and camped on the other side of the Arnon, in the wilderness that extends from the regions of the Amorites. For Arnon is the border of Moab, between Moab and the Amorites. This is why it is said in the book of the wars of the Lord, Wahab and Supah, and the Wadis, the Arnon, and the slope of the valleys that extends to the dwelling of Ar, and falls off at the border of Moab. And from there they traveled to Beer, that is, the well where the Lord spoke to Moses, "Gather the people, and I will give them water." Then Israel sang this song: "Spring up, O well, sing to it, the well which the princes dug, which the leaders of the people opened with their scepters and their staffs." And from the wilderness they traveled to Mattanah, and from Mattanah to Nehalel, and from Nehalel to Bamoth, and from Bamoth to the valley that is in the country of Moab, near the top of Pisgah, which overlooks the wastelands. Then Israel sent messengers to King Sihon of the Amorites, saying, "Let us pass through your land. We will not turn aside into the fields or into the vineyards, nor will we drink water from any well, but we will go along the king's highway until we pass your borders." But Sihon did not permit Israel to pass through his border. He gathered all his forces together and went out against Israel into the wilderness. When he came to Jahaz, he fought against Israel. But the Israelites defeated him in battle and took possession of his land from the Arnon to the Jabbok, as far as the Ammonites, for the border of the Ammonites was strongly defended. So Israel took all these cities, and Israel settled in all the cities of the Amorites, in Heshbon, and in all its villages. For Heshbon was the city of King Sihon of the Amorites. Now he had fought against the former king of Moab, who had taken all his land from his control, as far as the Arnon. That is why those who speak in Proverbs say, "Come to Heshbon, let it be built. Let the city of Sihon be established. For fire went out from Heshbon, a flame from the city of Sihon. It has consumed Ar of Moab, and the lords of the high places of Arnon." Woe to you, Moab! You are ruined, O people of Chemosh. He has made his sons fugitives and his daughters the prisoners of King Sihon of the Amorites. We have overpowered them. Heshbon has perished as far as Dibon. We have shattered them as far as Nopah, which reaches the Medeba. So the Israelites lived in the land of the Amorites. Moses sent spies to reconnoiter Jezer, and they captured its villages and dispossessed the Amorites who were there. Then they turned and went up the road to Bashan, and King Og of Bashan and all his forces marched out against them to do battle at Edrei. And the Lord said to Moses, "Do not fear him, for I have delivered him and all his people and his land into your hand. You will do to him what you did to King Sihon of the Amorites who lived in Heshbon." So they defeated Og, his sons, and all his people, until there were no survivors, and they possessed his land. Colossians 4. Wives, submit to your husbands, as is fitting to the Lord. Husbands, love your wives, and do not be embittered against them. Children, obey your parents in everything, for this is pleasing in the Lord. Fathers, do not provoke your children, so they will not become disheartened. Slaves, obey your earthly masters in every respect, not only when they are watching, like those who are strictly people pleasers, but with a sincere heart, fearing the Lord. Whatever you are doing, work at it with enthusiasm, as to the Lord, and not for people, because you know that you will receive your inheritance from the Lord as the reward. For the one who does wrong will be repaid for his wrong, and there are no exceptions. Masters, treat your slaves with justice and fairness, because you know that you also have a master in heaven. Be devoted to prayer. Keep alert in it with thanksgiving. At the same time, pray for us too, that God may open a door for the message, so that we may proclaim the mystery of Christ, for which I am in chains. Pray that I may make it known as I should. Conduct yourselves with wisdom toward outsiders, making the most of the opportunities. Let your speech always be gracious, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how you should answer everyone. Tychicus, a dear brother, faithful minister, and fellow slave in the Lord, will tell you all the news about me. I sent him to you for this very purpose, so that you may know how we are doing, and that he may encourage your hearts. I sent him with Onesimus, the faithful and dear brother, who is one of you. They will tell you about everything here. Aristarchus, my fellow prisoner, sends you greetings, as does Mark, the cousin of Barnabas, about whom you received instructions. If he comes to you, welcome him. And Jesus, who is called Justus, also sends greetings. In terms of Jewish converts, these are the only fellow workers for the kingdom of God, and they have been a comfort to me. Epaphras, who is one of you and a slave of Christ, greets you. He is always struggling in prayer on your behalf, so that you may stand mature and fully assured in all the will of God. For I can testify that he has worked hard for you and for those in Laodicea. And Hierapolis, our dear friend Luke the physician, and Demas greet you. Give my greetings to the brothers and sisters who are in Laodicea and Nympha, and the church that meets in her house. And after you have read this letter, have it read to the church in Laodicea. In turn, read the letter from Laodicea as well. And tell Archippus, see to it that you complete the ministry you received in the Lord. I, Paul, write this greeting by my own hand. Remember my chains. Grace be with you. The next daily reading through the Bible, week 10, day 5. Numbers chapters 22 through 25, Luke chapter 1. The scriptures quoted are from the NET Bible, netbible.com, copyright 1996, 2019, used with permission from Biblical Studies Press, LLC, all rights reserved.